like on the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. This piece is from Tucker Carlson on Fox News, and it's about Google and a software engineer fired for not towing the party PC line about life, the universe, and everything. I will let Tucker Carlson set it up. I have taken part of the interview. You can hear the whole interview online, and I will put a link to it on my website as usual, but I really don't expect this to be up very long. So when you hear it, grab it, listen to it.
Next up, a Google engineer dared to have his own opinions at work. Instead of praising his bravery, Google fired him. That engineer will join us next. 2 weeks ago, a software engineer called James-Damore wrote a memo assessing the political culture at Google, where he then worked. At Google, Damore wrote, "We talk so much about unconscious bias as it applies to race and gender, but we rarely discuss our moral biases. Considering that the overwhelming majority of social sciences, media, and Google lean left, we should critically examine these prejudices." Well, over 10 pages, Damore examined those prejudices in some detail. Notable among them is the belief that for women, bigotry is the main impediment to professional advancement. There are fewer female engineers than male engineers, liberals believe, because men are biased against women. Now, Damore suspected that was not the entire story. Quote, "We need to stop assuming that gender gaps imply sexism," he wrote. "On average, men and women biologically differ in many ways. These differences aren't just socially constructed." Now, Damore is a former childhood chess prodigy, and he's got a graduate degree in biology from Harvard, so his essay was precise. It was non-polemical in its assertions. Damore repeatedly pointed out that biological differences pertain to groups and often do not apply to individuals. None of that mattered. Danielle Brown, Google's vice president of diversity, released a statement charging Damore with having, quote, "incorrect assumptions about gender." Brown did not explain what those assumptions were or how they were incorrect. She didn't need to because nobody in the media asked. Google's CEO flew home from vacation in Europe to respond to the growing crisis. Many of Damore's fellow employees, meanwhile, howled for his dismissal. Former Google executive Yonan Zunger wrote an op-ed saying that Damore should be, quote, "escorted from the building by security and told that your personal items will be mailed to you." Others fantasized on social media about assaulting Damore. Nearly all news organizations described his essay as, quote, "an anti-diversity memo," when in fact Damore had argued strenuously that Google's culture needed more diversity. That was the whole point. Didn't matter. Within days, Damore was fired.
So we have the lead-in from Tucker Carlson, and then comes the interview itself, which is quite short, just explaining how ridiculous Google looks. Firing somebody who's obviously got a pretty good education, knows what he's talking about, but this is typical PC from the left. They don't like an alternative view of life. Makes you wonder how safe it is to use Google, doesn't it? Listen to this. I'm only going to play part of it. You can listen to the whole clip online, and I'll put a link on my webpage as usual. But listen to his reply, and it's quite shocking to me. And it's reminiscent of a movie that's come out this year called The Circle. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to see it, because I wonder if this is what Google looks like inside.
James Damore once trusted Google not to be evil. Probably not anymore. He joins us now. James, thanks a lot for coming on. I read, this saga from beginning until right now, and the one question that kept coming back to me was, did anyone at Google, before firing you, bother to respond to any of the points that you made? It's a data-driven company. They always say that. Did they say, here's why you're wrong, or did they just say you're being punished for asking questions?
Yeah, when I shared it with individual Googlers, they actually had an actual reasoned discussion with me, but only when it became viral did this huge emotional outrage happen.
So, of all places, you wouldn't think Google would have a culture where emotional outrage drives decision-making. I thought the whole point of Google was they're rational, but they don't sound rational at all.
Yeah, there's certain dogmas that you really can't dissent against at Google. and one of them being that there's any difference between people.
So the diversity officer, Ms. Brown, who said that your assumptions about gender were incorrect, did she ever explain how? Did she ever, again, point by point, rebut what you had asserted?
No, they haven't really given any details. They've just, the entire time, either just called me names, shamed me, or just made broad generalizations saying that what I was saying was pseudoscience, when really this is scientific consensus.
You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, Gab, and email. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on the links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all my morning moments on Spreaker.com under A Radio, that's EHRADIO, A Radio. And please click on the like button. At this time I have another exciting announcement to make. You can now find us on iHeartRadio under A Radio. And you can find all my podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.